Welcome to Insight Marketing Success, the podcast where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience, from vision to execution.
Hi, Jacob. Welcome to IMS, Inside Marketing Success. Today I have Jakub Grajcar. Jacob, we met each other, but tell us for our audience, who are you?
Okay, so my name is Jakub Grajcar. I'm the head of marketing at Talkie AI. We provide AI medical receptionists for medical practices. And so I'm head of marketing. I am a marketer with a background in content marketing in particular. And honestly, I love being on podcasts like this because podcasting as a marketing strategy is one of my favorite things to do. I'm also a public speaker, writer, and a musician. I used to play bass in a metal band until just recently. So I like being creative in a lot of the things that I do. And I'm really happy to be on the show.
Thank you. So, you know what, for our audience, tell us about the biggest challenge you had in marketing and how did you overcome it?
There's a project that I really like. This was 2 companies ago. We were running something called the Global CTO Survey. And I think that was one of the projects that I'm the proudest of right now. And I think, especially now in the age of AI, this is something that I think people are craving for, something real that they can sink their teeth into, something, of particular value. So the Global CTO Survey, what it was is in the name, right? We were sending this survey to CTOs around the world, promoting it through a variety of different channels, even paying for LinkedIn ads to get responses to this survey. This was a software development company, so connecting with CTOs was very important for us. And the challenge was just the scale and complexity of it all, making sure that we structure the questions. It was a pretty long survey because we wanted to ask about, well, at that time it was still machine learning, not so much AI, ask about how they're handling data, how they're doing cybersecurity, but how they're showing up as a leader too, right? So structuring the survey itself was an interesting question. One piece of advice I would have is we were running this with a range of partners, right? And including the partners at the stage of actually putting together the survey. So if somebody had, I think one of our partners was interested in this topic of like containers, for software. So they put in a question about containers so they could do like a little bit of research on their own. That's an interesting way to handle that. So big project with a lot of moving parts, various channels to gather the data, and then presenting the data. You've got like a raw sheet initially, right, of how many people answered, what's their budget for software development, 1 to 5, how they would rate themselves on cybersecurity. You really have to look at that data, and at that time we had to do it manually without AI, right, and try to draw conclusions like, oh wow, over 60% of the respondents said that they would rate their cybersecurity at a 3 or less. So what does that tell us about the confidence that CTOs have in their level of cybersecurity? This one was made up. I don't remember like off the top of my head in 2026 what we said in 2021 in the survey, but just as an idea, right? So it pays off to run these large data-driven content projects. It might not be low-hanging fruit, but I think if I were to put a message out there today, is try to actually gather some hard data that you can share with the world. It'll get you attention, it'll get you clicks, it'll get you backlinks, and also, at least for this one project, we'll be talking about something that's actually real, human-driven, and makes sense instead of more AI, poor quality content out there.
Okay, so I understand the project, but what were the elements of success for the project? I understand there were ads and there were a lot of things happening there, but what were the elements for success?
Do you mean like how did we know it was a success, or what we did to make it a success?
What did you do to make a success? Because first of all, CTOs are not going to give you a lot of time. What was
Right.
the incentive for them to give you to fill up the survey?
That's nice that you're asking about that to fill it in. So there was a whole package of incentives in there, actually. As I mentioned, we had a range of partners, and everybody kind of contributed their part, which in the end presented a pretty attractive package to CTOs, right? So if there was a SaaS partner involved, they might say, 20% offer tool if you fill out the survey. Some younger SaaS partner might say that, you get our tool for 2 months for free if you fill out the survey. And it only takes one of these incentives to be worth it for the CTO to fill out the whole survey. Filling it out might take them, I don't know, yeah, maybe 10, maybe even 15 minutes, right? As I said, it was a pretty comprehensive survey. But that's kind of how we structured the incentives. And also there was this element of mission here, help other CTOs know whether they're doing a good job, or are they falling behind, are they ahead. I use that a lot in the copy and in the video ads that I also recorded for this, with our team, to try and make them feel not just that they're providing some data to some company, but also helping others in similar roles. And I feel like, for people in the tech space, they do care about that. They run these community groups, they run these meetups, they try to help each other out. So tapping into that, I feel, was also part of that success.
Okay. So it was of items in which it was a series of different incentives, and it was how you presented it that made it a success. Did you reach your goal of the number of surveys you wanted to get filled up?
Yes, we did. I think we did 2 or 3 editions of that, and the biggest edition we had like 150 responses to that, which was huge for us. It was a big investment. Don't get me wrong. This took 5 figures in terms of like LinkedIn ad cost. But we used that content for even after I had left the company, it was still on the front page of the company that I was in, like insights from over 150 CTOs. So. And I'm speaking from memory. This might have been higher here, but just to be able to claim that you tapped into the market to such an extent that you're so informed by the needs of your target buyers, like people with specifically that role, that title, that was super valuable. So yes, in the end, it was a success.
That's cool. No question about it. I just wanted to make sure that we got the elements of success. So,
Sure.
in the same vein, let's talk about things that you did that didn't work as well as you expected, and let's call them learning experiences. Because
Right.
if you learn from the experience, then it's not really a failure. So, can you think of a time?
Well, how much time do you have? I mean, for learning
Well,
experiences, there's a lot. One that comes to mind, which is really like a facepalm kind of moment, looking back on it, is we invested again for the software development company, like 2 companies ago from Talkie. We invested way too heavily into like the LinkedIn company page. If anybody's still doing that, and you have like personal LinkedIn profiles you could leverage instead. I know it's a little bit more complicated. I know people might have a little bit of pushback about using their personal profiles, but the company pages really don't have that level of reach these days on LinkedIn. And people want to connect with people, really. There's a reason why influencers are reaching so far in terms of internet just reach and numbers and engagement, so much more compared to like a faceless brand, right? And yet we did multiple posts per week on the company page, sometimes even multiple rounds of revisions per LinkedIn post, just to get those 500 impressions, for example, from that LinkedIn post. It was a big mistake. We should have gone on in on the personal profiles. And what does that say really is that you need to respect the not so much the rules, but the way the algorithms work on each platform. And if you neglect that learning, if you don't do your research or your experimentation, then you'll just be wasting so much resource filling up in our case a profile that was never really going to go far, right? So it really pays off because as marketers we have so much to do. We spend so much time like looking at our immediate work and kind of nose to the page kind of thing, or like in front of our laptops, I should say, that we don't really look at the bigger picture. If there's something entirely different that we could be doing, should we pivot to video? Should we try a different kind of content format? And you need to experiment a lot more and question all the assumptions regularly to find something that really hits off and maybe not goes viral, but like reaches the audience that you want and actually punches through the noise on a given platform. So that was my big learning from that, is to always keep finding out, keep exploring what actually works on the platforms instead of getting set in your ways.
Yeah, nice. Well, how do you use storytelling in your brand communications?
I think storytelling, I've been in B2B my entire career, right? So first in software development, then I was in like project management software consulting for a while. Now we have this product for medical practices. So I think in particular in B2B, you really need to bring this down, this business reality down to the level of individual stories. Just a couple weeks ago, our CEO Ada had a successful LinkedIn post, which we structured as a conversation. And I mean, this structure of post is something that I saw on LinkedIn, again, exploring what works, right? Chris Cunningham from ClickUp started doing this sort of post, and we did it as well. So this conversation was between like a practice manager and one of their staff, and it was about, I think we should implement an AI medical receptionist. And then the practice manager might be the skeptical one saying, no, I don't think this would work for us. And then it's a back and forth. Why not? Because this, but have you considered that, right? But when you actually paint a picture, when you put, personas to the two different perspectives, I feel like people resonate with that. We're social creatures, so we really want to have to put a face to the name, a face to the concept even, or, the argument being made. I mean, look at even, meme culture, for example, right? Even we don't talk about like common emotions, but we always have to put a particular persona to the emotion. I'm trying to come up with at least one right now, and I'm totally blanking. But like, for example, the dog that's surrounded by fire saying, this is fine, everything is fine, right? That's what we resonate with, right? It's something it's almost like its own person or its own character, right? And people gravitate towards that, and there's nothing wrong with also leveraging that, right? So, you might be thinking, okay, based on that, let's have a brand mascot. But I don't mean just a brand mascot. Try to think of the different personas, the people who are in the room when your product is being discussed, And now, in the age of AI, even though it will be a little bit naive, it would be interesting to run this kind of simulation, Ask ChatGPT, for example, who's in the room discussing our product and what are they saying? And what can we say to them to try to bring them over to our side, right? So, as a tactical piece of advice, this kind of conversation-focused type of LinkedIn post, for example, look up Chris Cunningham. He's great in the way he grows his profile. You can also check out our COO, Ada Andruszkiewicz. So that's a tactical piece of advice, but like on a more general level, I think introducing these personas and really nailing down what they're about, so they're believable, that can really help introduce more storytelling into your brand.
Wonderful answer. One of the best I heard. And I think archetypes is something that, we can think about of that, right? Archetype, the doubter. Anyway, that's wonderful. All right. Well, because of that, what's the biggest trend you see in marketing today?
The biggest trend. I mean, it's easy to say that AI content is a trend, but I think the counter trend is more interesting. I was having a conversation just last week when somebody used the phrase confirmed human content or something to that extent, Content where you can be like this conversation, for example, right? Where you can be sure that it's coming from a person. You can be sure that this isn't, I mean, it would be very complicated to generate with video, with everything else in there, right? A conversation such as this. And I feel like that's going to be a trend, On the one hand, I think AI content has its place, being perfectly honest with you, in terms of repurposing, it can be quite useful. I use Riverside, for example, to repurpose podcast content for Talkie. It cuts out clips, it does captions, it does a good job, right? But people are going to crave confirmed human content because there's this uncertainty, of what even is real anymore, what even is coming from a human intelligence anymore. So conversational content such as this, podcasts are becoming huge on YouTube as well. And I think that's also why, for example, offline events are making a big comeback these days. On the one hand, it's kind of, the bounce back from COVID, right? Everybody was missing in-person events, so now everybody's doing in-person events. But at least when you're in the same room with a human, staring them into the face, you can be quite sure they're not, spewing AI content at you, right? Unless they got like an earbud or something, I bet that's coming. But anyway, so I guess that would be the most interesting trend, And I feel like, honestly, I'm all for it. I've always liked conversational content. I've liked spoken content. I'm more of a speaker than I am a writer, for example. I feel like there's kind of more to it when it's delivered in a spoken manner. I mean, content in general. So I would say that's a very interesting trend, and brands should be asking themselves, how can I have more of that confirmed human content? Not just another webinar, but maybe start a podcast, maybe run a small event, or anything else that that would make sense for your particular space, right? That's the trend that I'm most interested in seeing grow and most excited about.
Wonderful. Jacob, you are a great speaker. So let's go into who you really are. So I like to make this question where, let's imagine you're going to a restaurant where there are booths back to back. They cannot see each other. So suddenly you hear familiar voices of your best friends talking about you behind you. What would be the three things that you will hope they say about you?
I would hope that they would say that I'm enthusiastic. I kind of pride myself on that. My previous band, they called me CEO, Chief Enthusiasm Officer. I played bass. Bass might not add the most musically, but I definitely brought the energy, is what I thought. Another is I would hope that they would say that I unlocked some kind of insight for them through conversation, you know? Give them a fresh perspective, give them a piece of advice that resonates, something that's stuck with them, because it's so hard to say something that's actually going to stick with somebody and be their guiding light, at least for a while. So if I can share something like that, something that's memorable, that would be great to hear about them. And then I suppose likable. It comes to mind, Does that mean I'm a people pleaser? I don't know, but like I think everybody wants to be likable and everybody likes to feel accepted. So being totally honest with you, I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I would love for my friends to say that behind my back.
Yeah, 100%. I think we all like to be liked or loved or both, of course.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
well, because of life and life complexities, not everything goes according to plan, right? And
Mm.
sometimes you can have professional up and downs and personal up and downs, and that they even merge. So when becomes overwhelming, how do you manage that? How do you stay grounded?
I love that question. So we're recording this in 2026, just at the beginning of it. 2025 was a tough year for me, a lot of personal change, and I think what helped me stay grounded in that was really focusing on my relationship with myself. I'm a big proponent of talking to yourself. I think if you can have a good, fruitful conversation with yourself and you're able to calm yourself down, like literally say the right words to put yourself in a calmer state, that is exceedingly important. You are the only person that's going to accompany you throughout your whole life. So, building that relationship, focusing on it, and finding ways to address, difficult situations just with yourself, you yourself and you. I think that's one of the most important skills, and that has helped me a lot. I've read books about self-talk. I've had, I think a lot of us have had these kind of therapy sessions with ChatGPT, right? But I think, I've had moments when I was just looking at myself in the mirror, and this is funny, but I really recommend this exercise, right? We thank people often in our lives for what they brought into our lives, but we so infrequently thank ourselves, So this one evening, I was just looking at myself in the mirror and I was thanking myself for things big and small, You brought me this far. You brought me into this head of marketing job, You let me go through, I don't know, heartbreak and sadness and grief and all that stress, I'm on the other end of it. You're taking care of my body. You're taking care of my social circle. You're helping me stay in touch with my friends. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, I'm getting a little bit emotional even thinking about it right now. But that is such an important conversation to have with yourself, because again, at the end of the day, you are the only person that accompanies you all the time. So you need to have a positive relationship with yourself. And when it gets tough,
Yeah.
that's what I focus on. And I ask myself, huddle, okay, what are we going to do about today to turn it around? And oftentimes it's possible. Oftentimes it's possible. On other days, you turn to your friends, and that's extremely important too. But you have to be your best friend first.
Yeah. I'm going to add to you because I have studied this a lot and I just wrote a book. But I'm going to add to your conversation. It's very good what you said. It's lovely. And I have
Yeah.
never heard it. So it's great. You also need to forgive yourself,
Yeah.
because sometimes we carry that guilt or shame or whatever it is, because we did something that we didn't like, and instead of carrying that guilt, talk to yourself and forgive yourself and move on. All right. My last question to you is this. Let's imagine that you're able to whisper in your ear the wisdom you have today to that young Jacob, fresh out of college. And what will you whisper to yourself?
That's such an interesting question. There's a lot of cookie cutter advice here, take more risks, listen to your gut, stuff like that. And I guess there's a reason why people share that. In hindsight, you wish you had taken so many more swings. So for example, I had a really good trajectory at my first job, but I stayed there for almost 6 years. And often I find myself wondering, what would happen if I actually tried to try a lot of different contexts, switch jobs more often, for example, particularly when I didn't know it at the time, but the job market was so much more lenient, or maybe, it was easier to navigate back then, pre-AI, everything like that. So try more change might be one of those pieces of advice. But honestly, though, a lot of what I would say to myself, what I would whisper to myself is keep going. You've got the right idea. I'm happy with a lot of my choices in life, and I think that's also a good feeling to have. You don't always have to make this kind of drastic kind of change. So yeah, that, and of course, invest in Bitcoin, invest all your savings in there. You'll thank me later. But that's
All right,
that nobody could have known.
Jacob, thank you very much for your time today. You're a wonderful speaker. Look forward to getting to know you
Thank you.
better.
Great talking with you, Ricardo, and thank you to all the watchers and listeners of the show.
Thanks for listening to Insight Marketing Success, where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience from vision to execution.